are ready.
Okay. Well, let's call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm filling in for Janet Castaños, who is our chair. I'm the vice chair. And this is my first time having to do this, so please be nice. And, don't put me on restriction or anything. We need to call this meeting to order. So we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I apologize, I forgot to ask someone.
You need to call roll.
No, we have to do roll call first. Thank you. That's not on my list, so.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
Board Member Tiffany.
Here.
Board Member McWilliams.
He is out
Okay.
on vacation.
Board Member Johnson.
Here.
Board Member Fuentes.
Here.
Board Member Duff.
Here.
Board Member Darby.
Here.
Board Member Blackman.
She's on her way.
Vice Chair Dillard.
Here.
Chair Castaños.
She is also out on vacation. Does anybody have an extra pen? I just realized I don't have a pen. Okay. All right. So now we can do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right behind you. Okay.
Board Member Duff, are you okay with leading the Pledge of Allegiance? Shall we stand?
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so we have the next item. It says additions and or deletions to the agenda. Was there anything that I needed to know?
Staff has none.
Okay. And then was there any public comments before the meeting started?
So there was no e-comments that were submitted, and we do not have any hands raised at this time, so.
Okay. All right. So we'll go into conflict disclosures.
I don't believe any of the commissioner or board members have one for any of the items on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay. And so we'll move on to our current business. We have the approval of the minutes for the Community Police Oversight Board regarding meeting held Wednesday, February the 16th, 2022.
I move the approval of the February 16th, 2022 board minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
And with that approved,
Oh, we need to take
No,
you got it.
roll call. We're gonna do a roll call.
Go roll call.
Stacy.
Board Member Walker.
Well, let me just ask, because I didn't really ask if there was anyone that had any additions or any corrections. Was there anyone that had any issues? Okay, and then go ahead, please.
Board Member Walker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Tiffany, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Fuentes, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Duff, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Darby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes, so we're voting on the minutes right now, the previous minutes from the last two meetings, or one meeting, I believe it was. Yeah. Okay. So if you want to, yeah, say your,
That's a
yes.
yes for me, thank you.
Vice Chair Dillard,
Yes.
motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Point of order on voting now that we're in person, we can vote by hand, right?
Well, since we have, I mean, yes, we can, but it will be better to do the vocal, just, I mean, technically people can see us on video, but just in case they're having issues or if someone calls in with their phone, they're not seeing us. So we want to make sure that we vocalize it.
Thank you.
All righty. And so next up, we have the La Mesa Police Department updates. Chief Sweeney or?
Thank you very much.
Who's
Glad to find
talking?
you.
Okay,
I'll just come in and have a seat. Good to see everybody. It's very good, actually, to see everybody. So finally, we get to meet in person. I just want to give you a few updates on our staffing. Currently, we have 5 vacant police officer positions. We have 3 that are in field training currently right now. We have another 3 that are in the police academy that are scheduled to graduate on May 20th. So we're looking forward very much to having them graduate and come into the field training program. We have another 2 that are in the academy behind them. So they'll graduate, I believe it's August. So we're still trying to fill those ranks. Like I said, the training does take approximately 1 year to complete once they enter the police academy. So that is some time for us to catch up. We're still working on trying to hire laterals and academy graduates that'll get them into the training program quicker, basically eliminating that 6 month of the academy. So we're still very much focused on that. If you did not hear that we did a press conference with the county chiefs and sheriffs regarding a new county protocol for officer involved shooting investigations. So now San Diego PD will investigate our officer involved shootings. And so the sheriff department will investigate San Diego's. And then if San Diego and the sheriff department have a combined officer involved shooting, Chula Vista will investigate that. But basically San Diego PD will investigate all officer involved shootings for municipal counties or municipal agencies such as us, El Cajon, so on and so forth. So that's something new that we got together and put together. It's obviously we hear the call from the public to have somebody else do these investigations. And I think this is a great first step. So very proud to move forward with that. Hopefully we'll never have to use them. That's the intent. So that's my update. Thank you.
thank you, Chief Sweeney. Does anyone have any questions for Chief Sweeney?
Yes.
How many do you consider full employment?
We have authorized 69 sworn officers and 1 grant-filled position. So it's 70 technically.
There's 31 non-sworn, correct?
There are, is it 31 non-sworn? Christine? Yes. Sorry. Jack, you bet.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Chief Sweeney.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the presentation. This is the overview of the Community Police Oversight Board. We were going to have that on the screen, correct? Okay. I printed it out just in case there was a technical issue.
This is the report, Carlo, that you emailed to us.
This is the presentation, yeah,
To us.
yeah.
There it is.
Sorry.
Under pressure.
Look at that. Woo-hoo.
Pretty good. That looks good.
Okay. We're all good for now?
More high tech.
Okay. Well, listen, my intent is not to read to you what you could read for yourselves, but to, maybe offer any other explanation in regards to what we're going to share today. I just want to preface this with the understanding that It's really been a long process, making of this board. I feel blessed that we have board member Caitlin Tiffany and board member Bob Duff, who were with us kind of sort of in the beginning when everything was really difficult, to say the least. But the process that happened didn't just happen last year, is my point. And I hope that for the new members, because this was suggested last year, that the new members coming on board were kind of brought up to date, because we kind of felt like last year we had new people who came in and they just like came in, they were just like thrown in, and we really didn't have any real background for them except for what they may have read. So we think it's only fair that we share how we got to where we are and what we are going to be doing going forward, so everybody's on the same page. So the introduction and overview, we have the directing and reviewing audits of internal investigations, the whole purpose, reviewing and recommending policies, practices, and programs, promoting and encouraging open communication, which we have been diligent in regards, me personally, that's the way I feel about it, informing community of its rights and responsibilities. So that's been our accountability. And this is designed to affirm the La Mesa Police Department's ongoing commitment to policing that is fair, impartial, and objective. This whole thing started, I guess, in 2016 there with an advocacy group, a community advocacy group, and continued until 2020, when I guess it was the official start, or maybe late 2019, when it officially became the Oversight Task Force. And we began to work with the city to move forward with all the work that needed to be done to set up the ordinances to be approved by City Council, which got approved in late 2020. So 2020 was probably our toughest time because that's when the pandemic came and we were all just trying to make it through those meetings and do the work that was necessary to put the ordinances together. And we can thank our great lawyer team, one of them who happens to be on Zoom right now. We put it all together and got it approved. Was it October that we got it approved, 2020? We only submitted those ordinances once, right? Was it once? And it got approved. So that just goes to show you just how much work was put into it, work, effort, time, lots and lots of time, our own personal time to make sure we came as close to the wall as we possibly could to have power for the board. And that was approved, and we began in 2021, which I know that some of you came in 2021 and kind of got thrown into the process. So going forward, when we originally set it up, and you can go to that next slide, we set it up for 4 beats. And so every one of the board members are represented here, either beat 1, 2, 3, or 4. I don't know why number 3 is not on this. I'm thinking it's a typo.
No, so it's showing that there's 4 police beats, and then there's 2 different school districts
In them. Okay, and 2 youth and senior. Okay, so that's the way that's set up for us, but we all represent one of those beats.
Well, not just police. There's 4 members here. Well, yes, technically each of you live in one of the beats.
Right.
But yes, 4 of you specifically are representing one of the 4 beats. One of you is representing as a social advocate. 2 of you are one is from Helix and the other from the district, yeah, sorry, Lamesa Spring Valley School District. Then there's a youth representative, well, youth, young adult, more so, senior representative, a business representative, and then faith-based, which there's a vacancy right now in.
Right. So that was put in place. And then moving forward under the membership, to the next slide. We have a summary of our accomplishments. We felt that it was important to let people know just how much work and effort we've done, not just, prior to 2020 in getting the ordinances approved, but pushing forward in 2021, we have all of these items that we addressed, which was to complete the initial administrative setup for the bylaws, leadership policies and procedures manual, which we actually started in 2020 and was finalized in 21. We collected the baseline data date to assess changing attitudes over time, participated and selected in the selection of the independent police auditors. And I don't know where Anna is. I guess she's not. Oh, there you are. She's wearing the mask. Anna and I participated in the selection over the independent police auditors, and that took us some time because we had to submit twice, right? We had 2 RFPs that went out. The first one, we agreed that we needed to try again. It just wasn't meeting the RFP with the submission. So we put it out again. And we landed the great IPAs that we have now. One is represented right there with his beautiful face right there, Rick Rasmussen. And we're very happy to have them on board with us. We participated with the city and also with the police department, and we worked diligently and we spent a lot of time there. So that was a great accomplishment for 2021. Completed introductory training and ongoing continuing education, created internship application and program, and developed an approved complaint process form and flow, which also initially started up in 2020 and kind of carried over. We collected research on various crime prevention and social service strategies, and now analyzed and discussed Hillary Hines' after action report with IPA and the chief. And I'll just stop right there because I know that maybe some of you don't, especially the new ones, may not know what the Hillary Hines after action report was. That is actually was based on what happened with the peaceful protest that turned into a riot on May 30, I think it was 30th. Of 2019.
2020.
Was it 2020? Okay.
Everything
All right.
2020.
Yeah, keep me straight, y'all. That report was focused on that. That was the terrible thing that happened, down off of La Mesa Boulevard and also at the local Vaughn's Shopping Center that I'm sure you all are aware of. And so they basically gave out a report at that time and made recommendations to the La Mesa Police Department. We participated in the chief's community outreach efforts, Form 5 submitted as, well, let me just stop there again. With the chief, Chief Sweeney started out as our acting chief, and we started our relationship with him during that process. And then when he became the chief, one of the first things that he did was go out to the community and listen to a lot of complaints that the community had to give. And I attended a couple of them. I think other members attended at least one of those because he went to four different schools, right, Chief Sweeney?
Yeah.
And he spent a lot of time just listening and we were happy that he did that because we want our community to be able to tell us what's on their minds and what their concerns are. And he was very patient and diligent. And I think y'all took lots of notes for you and he was able to respond to some of those issues that came up. And we hope that, that it'll be an ongoing effort and he'll do that at least once a year. I can't remember if you set something up for
We're
yourself.
gonna do it again this summer.
Okay, so summer outreach, but that is always a positive thing to stay in contact with the community. And it's one of the things that the board wants to be involved in is making sure that we're involved with what the community thinks about our police department and anything we can do to help. We also we formed 5 subcommittees to develop reports on community policing and outreach, policy operations and training, emergency operations and communications, hiring practices, promotions and office wellness, compilation of overall summary report, and then developed and approved the annual report. So those are some of the things. I think we also continue to conduct data collection to gather information for the purpose of measuring change over time, receive ongoing training and continuing education training, promote internship application, develop a program for the accessibility and mediation of the complaint process, develop and recommend community outreach programs, and develop and recommend alternate social service and crime prevention policies and strategies. I think that's it for, is there still more?
Oh, this is what you were just reading off was the work plan for 2022.
Oh, okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so under the work plan for 2022, these are all the items that we worked on all year long. So is there a second page on that? So it's continued. Receive quarterly reports from the independent police auditors, provide semi-annual reports to La Mesa City Council and City Manager, worked with LMPD to implement Hillard Hine after action report recommendations, continues to evaluate LMPD policies and provide ongoing recommendations, continue working with the chief to engage in LMPD hiring process whenever possible. And to mention that, how many people participated in the hiring processes that happened last year? Okay, so there were, I don't know if Janet participated. So there was 5 of us? Yeah, so 5 of us came out. I know I spent one whole day in there. I thought they were gonna lock me up, but they were nice. It really helps to work with the police department as far as the board is concerned to try to understand the things that it's impossible for us to know. And so it's important for us to work together and just know what kind of people, that's when we learned just what kind of people were within the police department. And we found, at least in our hiring process that we went through that day, that I participated in, we found, some very qualified, caring police officers. And that was refreshing, to be honest with you. But of course, he was already picking from the top there. So, but we're pleased with all of the new hires that you got out of that, or at least we hope we were able to share our opinions. We also collaborated with the independent police auditor to review audits for the La Mesa Police Department investigation. So some of the community things, we took pictures. There's Janet Castaños telling everybody what to do. Chief Sweeney's community listening sessions. This is just one of the locations. I believe that was that in Lemon Grove right there?
Looks like Rwanda.
I mean, not Lemon Grove. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong. Yeah. I That was the one I was at. And there's Nate. Now, I was with Chief Sweeney. Actually, Janet and I were with Chief Sweeney, and we went to Nate's a little shop there. I can't remember what's it called? B. It's called B or something like that. Anyway.
Movement B.
Yes, Movement B. And Nate's artist taught us how to be artists. And that's Chief Sweeney's art.
Please don't laugh.
It was a fun time, though. It was fun. And of course, this is the district attorney's presentation, United Against Hate Crimes. And this is what the CPOB is all about. Promote and encourage open communication and cooperation between the La Mesa Police Department and residents of the city, recognizing that policing is a shared responsibility. So I hope I didn't talk too much about the details, but I felt it was important to share some of those details because a lot of the work that we did do, it just seemed rather dry, and there was some, times that, it just wasn't easy. And it takes time to do something like this, and we're thankful that we had our council because they kept us straight. And then I also want to recognize Megan because Megan, did you ever get that raise? Girl, I've been asking for you to get a raise like forever. So you didn't report. So, but Megan put up with us when we were in the Oversight Task Force, and Lord have mercy. It got rough sometimes, but she kept us straight with everything, and she did a fantastic job.
Excellent.
Always has been there. She doesn't take vacations on us. I don't know what that's all about, but she just has done an outstanding job, and I think she needs to be recognized amongst the board. Did you have a question?
No, I have one more. We selected a new captain, and we were all involved in this too.
A game changer.
Game changer. That was his mantra.
Okay. Did you want to share anything about it? Because I didn't go.
Oh, you did. That was a lot of fun. It was enlightening in many respects because we heard what youth had to say and some of the attitudes they were speaking. And we teamed up with different youth, so I don't know what happened in some of the groups, but and we selected, I wanted to get one of them, a very bright young men too, and women. But there was one young man that I wanted to get on. He wouldn't come on as our youth person.
Well, you just keep trying. I learned with kids, you just don't take no for an answer. You just keep asking. And eventually, you wear them down because they will wear you down when they want something. I learned that when I raised 3 children. So they just don't give up. They all needed to be hired as lawyers. So, but yeah, I'm glad that event went so well.
Yeah, I would want to add too, I went to a separate game changer event and I was impressed by the police officers and their points of view, different departments that were part of the game changer. And so, as different opportunities come up, I would recommend that to anybody. It was just a really good learning opportunity. So,
yeah, and I'd say that probably every single time we've had meetings with either the chief of police or other police officers. I've had a chance to meet other police officers. We want to continue down the road that, obviously, we have to continue to make changes, and change is hard, right? But we don't want a passive aggressive situation. And that's what we've really worked hard on. And I don't know if people could really understand that, but if you want to make progress, you have to be able to work with people. We've been fortunate that Chief Sweeney, came into our meetings, and I'm kind of speaking for you, Chief Sweeney, but I can imagine that you thought in the beginning, what kind of crap did I get myself into? Because, excuse my language, but I'm sure it was kind of hard for you to listen to some of the things that, you know, people were talking about, but you took the time to listen. And that's what we have to do. We have to take the time to listen to people we even may disagree with. And then start from somewhere from there. And I think that with Chief Sweeney, I want to say he's probably was just young enough that he didn't come in and cross his arms and act like he was listening. And we all know that he wasn't. Instead, he leaned in and tried to really understand, well, what the heck do these people want? And maybe, just maybe, you know, we can recognize that there are some changes that need to be made, and that he can help the officers, and then he can help us understand, and then we can continue to communicate to try to get more done as we go.
Yeah, and adding on to that, as when we were in the task force and we were trying to figure out how to make the board, we spoke with many other oversight committees, organizations, boards from different cities, and every single one said the most important thing is getting cooperation from the police department.
Absolutely.
That is the number one thing. So, and I also want to thank you, Chief Sweeney, but also highlight Lieutenant Bell back there, because
Yes.
he was in our task force meetings, sitting and listening to all of that, and has also been very receptive to what we have been talking about and listening to us. So thank you for
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like we've gotten the board at a really good place, and we do need to keep pushing and working on items. But again, as long as we're willing to listen to one another, even if we disagree, that we keep working with one another and we keep communicating and you know, figuring it out, you know, because I know that it's kind of intimidating to walk into the police department, especially when you start hearing about different policies and procedures and things that officers can do and things that they can't do. Well, we don't know all that stuff. So we have to spend time listening as well, so that we can better understand what it is that our police officers have to do every day, which we know that they put their lives on the line for our community, but at the same time, we have issues that still need to be addressed, and we have to work on them. And we can't just ignore them and think that they'll go away. And this is also a preventive measure. We want to make it so that the terrible things that we hear about across the nation don't happen in our city. We can't control what happens in other people's cities, but we can work on you know, helping this situation within our own community. And so that's the most that we can do. And I think that we have a great team, including our council, including the IPA, and including, of course, even the city has been amazing. And of course, you know, Megan is the superstar and she deserves a raise. So,
making me blush.
That item's not on the agenda.
no, I'm sorry. Caroline has not corrected me yet. Said, sorry, you cannot say that again. Do not say that. Because
I second.
I was going to say, she knows it's true. So she, so anyway, that's all I have, unless anyone has any other questions. Any comments?
Two things. One comment, I went to the NACOL convention last year, which is the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, a nationwide organization. And I heard horror stories about boards trying to get set up in cities and towns. We are blessed to have these men in blue, men and women in blue, to work with here. That it's, I can't overstate what a great job y'all do, and how it's a pleasure to work with you. And the city manager and everybody else has been
Of course,
Fantastic.
yeah, we didn't even mention our assistant city manager who
Yeah.
is like a library. It's like a walking library. I've never seen anything like it. Super sharp. There isn't anybody that could beat him. So I hope he doesn't leave. I did ask him personally not to leave. So,
Second thing is, and it's not so much germane to what the report is, but in the back of my mind is we have a semi-annual report due anytime now.
So we'll have another report going back out, I want to say in July. But we do now have quarterly reports that the IPA is going to be providing, which will also serve to meet the requirement that's in the ordinance.
Okay, so the board, will we again have to collate reports the same way as we did for the annual report?
In a similar way. I'll help you with those. Yeah, absolutely.
and then it's not on the agenda, but there was the Assembly Bill 481 that I don't know, was there any questions about that bill?
It's on the
It's on the
agenda.
agenda. It's on the-
Where did it? Okay,
Here, the chief will cover that.
okay, so, oh, okay, so I'm sorry.
Move on to that item. We have a presentation from. Yeah.
Okay, so then that's what this is. I apologize. I totally missed it. I told you, don't beat me up. Okay, so yes, so this bill, we're gonna get a presentation, and you can come forward and do your thing.
And Vice Chair, if I just say something real quick, the appreciation to us doesn't go unnoticed because we appreciate you. I know it's hard for you to come in from your civilian jobs and the different things that you hear and talk to us and really get to know us, know what La Mesa PD is about. That takes effort, to come in here. Obviously, we were doing Zoom and now you're here in person, but to participate in our processes only helps us get better. So when you asked me if, it was a bad thing when I got hired, it was great. Obviously change is scary for anyone. I don't care who you are. But we know what we need to do, and to have more sets of eyes on the things that we're doing is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but the education, the understanding. And so Captain Runge is going to present to you Assembly Bill 481, which is the military equipment legislation that just came out. And so he'll go through that with you to.
All right, you're all set. Sorry about that.
No problem. So like the chief mentioned, I'm going to be presenting to you guys some information on Assembly Bill 481. Like Vice Chair Dillard mentioned in her presentation, one of the very important things you guys do is review policies for us, provide guidance to us, and your guys' thoughts on policies before they go into place. And this particular policy and ordinance will be I'll be presenting to the City Council next week. First reading, first presentation on this policy. And so your guidance, your questions and your comments will be very useful to us as we go forward. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk about why we have Assembly Bill 481 and how that particular bill defines what military equipment is. It is very broadly defined in the Assembly Bill. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about what we have. What does the Mesa Police Department have that's defined as military equipment? Why that equipment is needed, how it's used, what outreach efforts we have made over the past several weeks to let the community know that this is coming. And then, of course, answer any questions that you guys have. So we'll get right into it. So AB 481 was passed in September of 2021 as one of many police reform measures that came into being last year. And what its intent is to increase transparency, accountability, and oversight for the acquisition and use of what the Assembly Bill defines as military equipment. It is more broadly designed to provide safeguards to protect the public's welfare, safety, civil rights, and liberties, and requires an annual report. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on the annual report. And perhaps most importantly, to create a public forum to engage with the community on this equipment, what we have, and how we might use it in the community. So there are 15 categories that the Assembly Bill defines as military equipment. When we hear the term military equipment, we think of things that the military has, obviously, but they define the term much more broadly under 15 different categories. You'll see two different colors here. You'll see an orange and a black color. Things that are in orange, just so you guys know, are things that the La Mesa Police Department does have in their possession. And the things that are colored in black are things that is a category defined under AB 41, but we don't have any equipment that is under those categories. I'll go over them pretty briefly because there are 15 of them. Starting with unmanned, remotely piloted, powered aerial or ground vehicles. It's a fancy way of saying drones and robots. And we do have both of those. There is an inventory that's attached to the policy. It is in some of the materials that were emailed to you and have been on our website for quite some time. And of course, if there are any questions about any of the things that we do have, happy to answer those at the end. The next category, category 2, we do not have any mine resistant ambush protected vehicles or armored personnel carriers. Category 3, we do have a vehicle that has a breaching or entry apparatus attached to it. It is our Bearcat vehicle that you may have seen if you've been to the station and gone on a tour. We do not have any tracked armored vehicles. We do have a command and control vehicle. That's a fancy way of saying a mobile command post. You may have seen that as well if you've been on a tour or been to one of our classes that we hold. But it's a van that we can take out into the field to provide an opportunity to have a dispatch center and a computer center out in the field at our command post. We do not have any weaponized aircraft, vessels, or vehicles. We do have battering rams and slugs and breaching apparatuses. We do not have any firearms of 50 caliber or greater, or ammunition of 50 caliber or greater. We do have specialized firearms and ammunition of less than 50 caliber. None that are designed to launch explosive projectiles. We do have the next 3 categories: noise flash diversionary devices and explosive breaching tools, munitions containing tear gas or OC, excluding standard service issue handheld pepper spray that you see, the red bottles that you see the police officers carry on their duty belts. The category 13 lists a few different things, one of which is included on our inventory, 3 which are not. We do not have a taser, shockwave, microwave weapons, water cannon, and in fact, we don't have or own a long-range acoustic device, but we included it on our inventory because it is a piece of equipment that we may borrow from another agency if needed down the road, so we wanted to include that on there. And we do have kinetic energy weapons and munitions. The last category is kind of a catch-all. We don't have anything that falls under it, but basically it's anything else that we would deem or think might require additional oversight. So our equipment inventory, like I said, we do have equipment that meets the criteria for several categories. You can see them listed there. It is important to note, I put this here in bold, that we don't have any equipment that was transferred to us under the programs for the Department of Defense, that known as 1028 or 1033. So there has been no equipment that has been given to us directly by the military. All the equipment that you see in our inventory is equipment that we purchased ourselves. So AB 481 requires a few things, and we're in the initial stage right now. It went into effect January 1st. And the first thing that the Assembly Bill asks us to do is exactly what we're doing now: come to our governing body, which we're going to do next week, our City Council, and inform them of the items that we have that fall under the purview of the bill, and seek their approval to have them and to use them. And then moving forward, there will be an annual reporting requirement that will also be an open and public meeting with the City Council, in which we will explain how we've used the equipment in the past year, if we have, the maintenance and use costs that we've seen in regards to that equipment, any internal audits, where is our inventory now, are there any upcoming major maintenance issues that we're looking at, and any community feedback that we've received in regards to this particular type of equipment. We will include that annual report to City Council in a public meeting so that the entire community can know if there has been any feedback, questions, or concerns raised about that particular equipment. Next question that we're going to look at here: why do we need this equipment? So we of course recognize that critical incidents can occur and it can be very unpredictable, very dynamic in nature. Some examples of these types of incidents are active shooter incidents, hostage situations, large-scale operations to locate violent or dangerous suspects, bomb threats, mass casualty events, any of these types of events. A variety of these equipment options, having them in our possession, gives us as many options as possible when we are trying to address an issue. We want our incident commanders, our officers in the field, our supervisors to have as many resources available to them as possible to bring any situation to a safe and quick conclusion. And we don't know what that might be. A lot of this equipment we of course hope we never have to use. But we do want to have it in our possession so that it is an option to protect the community if any of these incidents do come up. Besides deploying any of this equipment into the field, of course, we want to know how to safely use the equipment. So, of course, we will be using this equipment in a training arena throughout the year. And even if used simply for training, that use will also be recorded in the annual report to City Council so that the public can know exactly what we've done to train on this particular equipment. And a common question would be, why does the La Mesa Police Department itself need to have this equipment when we have a mutual aid option? We have large agencies next door, Sheriff's Department, San Diego Police Department that has this equipment. How come we have to have it? And the answer to that is these incidents happen without notice. These incidents happen very quickly and they change very dynamically and very quickly. And mutual aid is most often used as a way to amplify our abilities, but we do need to be able to respond to them ourselves within the city limits if we do have an incident that comes up. It is something I wanted to note there also that with the exception of the drones that we have, our mobile command vehicle, I mentioned that, and our less lethal weapons, all of the equipment in our inventory is for use only by our trained SRT, Special Response Team officers, and that is our SWAT team. So only people that have been through specific SWAT training and specific training that is required by the state before they can use any of this equipment, or not any, but the ones besides those. So we've been talking about AB 481. Take off the one. There's another very important assembly bill that came through us, Assembly Bill 48. Assembly Bill 48 addresses equipment, including the equipment includes in AB 481. If it's ever utilized to disperse an assembly, protest, or demonstration. And I wanted to note that AB 48, as well as our department policy, requires that the use of any of the equipment listed here in any of those specific situations can only be utilized according to our current policy and according to AB 48. Community engagement activities leading up to today. Like I mentioned, we will be taking this to City Council next week. Drafts of the proposed policy and inventory have been on the website since March 23rd. And dedicated email address is included on that webpage, and that the public can use to contact us with any questions or concerns leading up to the City Council meeting. And of course, I'm presenting to you today in advance of the meeting next week. And I hope that people have had a chance to look over the materials that are on the website. And with that, I can take any questions.
Subsequent to the protest that took place, there have been a lot of comments about officers that use certain weapons. We're not trained adequately. How does that work through? Does every officer trained that might be on duty at that particular time trained to use specific weapons?
Yes, it's important to note that AB 481, it does state that is the military equipment funding acquisition and use policy. The term use in this sense is seeking the approval of the City Council to use the listed equipment. The actual deployment or use of that equipment is going to be still, of course, governed by our use of force policies, by our training directives, and by our policies and regulations. So a lot of the equipment, the vast majority of this equipment that's in our policy that's defined by the Assembly Bill is only for the use by our trained Special Response Team operators who do receive special training. The exceptions that are on there are drones, the aerial vehicles, the unmanned vehicles that can only be used by people who have received very specific FAA training. And then we have our less lethal weapons. that every member of our department does receive training on a very regular basis. Yes. Yes, sir.
So, the kinetic weapons that I keep doing research on them and it just doesn't look like wonderful stuff to me. So what exactly are we looking at in terms of the kinetic weapons that?
So the kinetic energy weapons that we have, included in our inventory, are going to include our beanbag shotguns that can be used maybe is there something else? Ball launcher. Pepper ball launcher. Pepper ball launchers as well, please. 40 millimeter. 40 millimeter. I'm sorry. The 40 millimeter baton rounds.
Got like 3 uses.
Yes. Yeah, questions?
So that's not actually meant to kill, that's just meant,
Less than lethal.
okay,
That's the intent.
okay.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we have to have enough evidence, if you will, to be able to use that. Obviously, somebody's attacking us or attacking somebody else. We're trying to prevent, obviously, a fatal encounter.
Mhm.
So those,
And would you use that, like, if someone just was trying to beat you up, they weren't necessarily had a weapon on them, but they were just fighting?
if we could, I mean, I think it's important to note what Captain Rungy was saying is all these situations are dynamic.
Mhm.
So it's really going to depend. If somebody's trying to beat me up and come at me, most likely I'm using my hands to defend myself, especially if they're unarmed.
Mhm.
But in those cases where we have, say, a barricaded subject that's in a car that doesn't want to come out, we can use the pepper ball launcher to launch pepper balls inside the car to make it really irritating for them to stay in.
Does that like blow through glass, or only if they have the window down?
We do have glass breakers that come with that,
Oh, okay.
but the pepper ball that we're talking about is just the OC spray. It's the same thing as that's on my belt, but it's in a ball form, so it's powder form.
So
So when it
kinda
goes in, it bursts
Mhm.
and makes the powder come up, and it's really irritating. Really irritating.
So
But-
eyes and
Eyes,
mouth.
nose, mouth.
Eyes, nose, mouth.
Eyes, nose, mouth, but it is not effective on 100% of the population.
So if they're on PCP,
Not even, and I'll give you a prime example of pepper spray. So pepper spray is the same thing that you use in pepper ball launchers. But when I went to the police academy, we all go to the police academy, we get sprayed with pepper spray so that you know what it feels like and how it's going to react to you. When I got sprayed, I had no reaction. I thought that was odd. But when I was driving home after the academy, after a full day, I bit into an apple and the apple juice squirted in my eye and it instantly had a reaction. So my eyes slammed shut. I tried to pull up from the freeway, which safely I did. But that's just important to know for all the officers when they go through the training is that this may not be effective on everybody. So, we may have to look at different options.
so not necessarily if they're on drugs, it could still affect you.
Correct.
Or not affect you.
I wasn't on drugs.
Okay. So no PCP for you.
No.
I was the guy that was still there at 6:30 p.m. Like, I still couldn't open my eyes.
Wow.
You mentioned that if someone to attack you, you use your hands. Have you and other members of the department been trained in Aikido or other types of self-defense mechanisms?
So we train in our defensive tactics. Defensive tactics is trained, or it's just a mix of either some type of martial art or defensive tactics, jujitsu. Some of the officers train in that. But it's really just a multitude of all of that. There's no specific expertise that the officers train in, but we do have training anchors through the Peace Officer Standards and Training that the officers have to go through. Control holds, pain compliance, handcuffing, all those things are in the mix of what we train in. So it's quite a bit, and we're more than welcome to come into one of our training sessions to see that. Yeah.
Does anyone have any other questions? And while we're asking about questions, Deputy Reddy, do we have any public comments or questions?
We do not have any public comments or questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Captain Rungby.
I have one
Oh.
comment, sorry. So more comments than a question. I'm sure you've heard this, but just wanted to say community perception of like militarized weapons generally, and why this has come up as a thing is, you know, the Department of Defense, and I'm glad that you all didn't take stuff from the Department of Defense. That was really nice to hear. Is like fighting other people. And so when you hear that your police department has militarized weapons, as a community member, it makes you feel like, oh, this is like a battle and maybe they're going to fight me. And that this is like two separate people, like that you're in conflict automatically because that happens. And I'm not saying that you're not trying to be in conflict with us. It just that's the perception that's going to come across. So I think this transparency is going to help. I think people are going to have comments about the various things. And so I appreciate you taking the time to think about how is it used? Is this really useful in the situation? What is the community perception going to be? And can that maybe have a backlash?
And I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because we talked with Janet and Patricia earlier, and we added that into our policy, that we understand that could be a concern or cause within the communities when you bring these type of tools, if you will, out into the community that can have a severe effect. So we added that into our policy because of the conversation we had, so that the incident commanders can also take that into consideration when they're making a determination on what we need to use. But it won't limit them, obviously, but we need to have that in consideration. And the only other thing that I'll say, if you don't mind, is, I mean, AB 481 lists military equipment. My personal opinion is it's not military equipment, it's specialized equipment. And I think that is worse that it is termed that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the term is scary.
Part of the problem with the metaphor is the image is tanks and planes and flamethrowers.
Right. Yeah,
Hold on here.
I
And you
think
can't
part
help
of that
having
is
that
though
vision,
that
right?
that it wasn't just that word. I think when the community sees it, that's the thought that they have.
Yeah.
It's not even that, you know, they use the word and that makes it scarier. But I think the point was, if you're as a community member, you don't have any idea what the use of this equipment is, but you might have even seen like in other countries and stuff that, you know, the water cannons and massive amount of tear gas, that's scary. And it seems like an assault on the community. And so you see that and you perceive it as militarized, even if it's not necessarily actual military equipment, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I mean, if you think, and I will talk about our Bearcat. I mean, our Bearcat is an armored vehicle. It looks like it has a turret on top, and basically it is for an observation. But that armored vehicle is meant for rescue and insertion of officers in highly dangerous situations. That's it. But a lot of people don't know that. And so, you know, I think historically police, we've seen like this secret organization because of, you know, the guarded personnel files and POBAR and all these things that come into play. But the reality is there's nothing secret. And all of this just kind of brings out that transparency to show you what we have and how we use it. Obviously, we want to be careful as to who we tell how we use things, as you can understand.
Yeah.
But with our Bearcat, I'll give you one good example. In El Cajon Police Department, I think it was back in, and Chad, maybe help me out here, was it 2004?
Yes. No, it was actually 2011.
To rescue that officer?
Yeah, 2011, I think it was.
So it was an El Cajon Police Department officer that responded to a domestic violence incident and was being shot at. Actually took a round in his neck, was stuck there in that area. That Bearcat did exactly what it's supposed to do, is go in and rescue and protect that officer. And also insert firefighters because of the fires and things that had happened. So it looks like that, but I think the biggest thing here is what we're talking about. It's education. You know, we'll let you know what we use it and why we use it. And you know, just historically, unfortunately, we haven't done that. So I'm glad we're here to this point. So if you have any questions on anything that we use and why we use it, we're happy to do that. We have Lieutenant Bell as our SWAT commander. So it's our special response team. And like Captain Runge said, a majority of the items on this list are only used by trained SWAT operators. So the standard police officer that you're seeing going around the streets is not carrying all this equipment.
Right.
There's a section on the website where you can go down and it lists all the specialized enforcements, and it gives the purpose and reason and when you
It
use
also
it.
Yeah.
gives appearance guidelines for your guys' uniforms, which I was reading too, but then you go through that, like you said. Chief, what color are the tactical gear that you guys have?
Our tactical gear is OD green. It's green. So we know that that's our tactical piece when they go in.
I think some people could get the perception. I understand that they could think, oh, this is a soldier coming in. And, like all of us have seen what's going on in Ukraine. You got a helmet on, you got a Kevlar helmet on, you got your plate, and those guys, the press has a different color. So, I mean, I could understand perception as far as that goes, but you got to be able to let everybody know it's tactical. It's time to get it on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, it falls back to the educational piece. I mean, you had that question, I'm sure other people do too. And we do demonstrations at schools. We do demonstrations when people ask us to come out to neighborhood watch meetings to show this equipment, to showcase it. So that when people have questions, we can answer those. I think we just need to do a lot more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably be good at the community outreach you're doing over the summer to also talk about this.
Yeah, and this conversation is exactly what we need to bring those suggestions forward.
I have a question. Does the website list specifically what the policy states as for when these types of devices can be used specifically?
So the policy just goes over the devices that we have. Our use of force policy, which is also on the website, goes over how we can use them and when we can use them.
Got it. Okay. It just reminds me of, those isolated incidents. Alfred Alongo had a pen in his hand and unfortunately died. And then with the riots and the protests and things, even though the officers were using beanbag guns, people were severely injured. So that's good to know that that's on the website.
Question. Is the department concerned that when you respond to, for example, Black Lives Matter protests with like this military responses or using these military devices, that instead of taming the violence, you might be escalating it?
I think that's always a consideration. I mean, we consider that all the time, even in our initial response to a protest. We never want to escalate it. We want to de-escalate it. So case in point, obviously, we learned a lesson in our protest where we didn't want to escalate it by showing up and having a presence. And in hindsight, that was a mistake. We should have been out there showing the presence. So, I mean, we always consider that, and we never want to escalate things up, but obviously a lot of time that's out of our control as to where it gets, but completely within our control in the planning stages. Does that make sense?
I will finish with one thing, Chief, if I might.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing up the input that we did receive from Vice Chair Dillard and Chair Castaños. It's only a couple sentences. I will read the addition that we made into the policy. This comes under our usage guidelines. The La Mesa Police Department recognizes that the deployment of military equipment can have a significant and traumatizing impact on the community. These potential influences should be included in the decision-making process before approving the use of the equipment covered by this policy. So that is part of our proposed policy moving forward. And you're absolutely right. The term military equipment does bring forth a lot of different thoughts and connotations. We are simply using the term military equipment because that is the word used in the Assembly Bill itself. The chief's use of specialized equipment, AB 481 equipment, probably better defines it.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
If I can add just one thing, because I think it's important, because it was asked of us, is the LRAD, the long range acoustic device, is a military piece of equipment. Technically, it has been used in the military, but we only use that device because it's one of the loudest PA speakers you've ever heard in your life. I'm serious. It's wonderful. We have it on top of our building. People called out on August 1st. We had it there. So we want to make sure that if we had to announce that this is an unlawful assembly and this is where you need to go, we wanted everybody to hear. And that's the trouble that we ran into on May 30th, is that not everybody could hear. And so to be able to use a device, I wish it wasn't an LRAD. I wish it was, loud, very loud speaker, whatever you want to call it, but that's what we use it for. We don't use it for the capabilities of audible weaponry. I can't remember exactly. Acoustic weapon, thank you. We do not use that, nor will we ever use that. And it's also good to note that mutual aid agencies that come into our city, they have to abide by their policy, their ordinance. And just so you know, the Sheriff's Department, San Diego PD both have long-range acoustic devices, and they are only, just like everybody else, allowed to use it for PAs. That's it. So I think that's important for the community to know.
That is good to know.
All right.
Now, I have one more question. I'm sorry, I just thought of this. We had a topic that came up before about the sheriffs, and you just brought it up and it rung in my head. We know that the sheriff's department goes through all the cities, and including La Mesa. And we had an incident where it was misinterpreted that it was La Mesa Police Department, and it actually ended up, after doing some research, that it was the Sheriff's Department. So are they receiving the same thing that all of the police departments are receiving? Is that just
That's
like
fine.
across the board? Is this AB 481?
Yes,
So everybody is getting it?
everybody.
Okay,
Every agency in the state of California has to get an ordinance from their city council to be able to use it, or their board of supervisors. Yeah.
oh, okay, okay. Okay, I think that's it, and we still don't have any comments?
No, not at this moment.
Okay.
I move we adjourn to May 18th.
Well, before we adjourn, let me just ask if there's any staff or board member announcements? No staff announcements? And no member announcements? Okay, then I have nothing else, and we can adjourn our next meeting,
May 18th.
May 18th.
That would be in person.
That'll be here again.
Can we do it remote? Not individually.
Individually, if
I
you
will
wish,
be in Arizona.
you may do this, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we're still gonna have Zoom.
I might not be able to get out of work fast enough to get here, so
So we
I,
have the
just
ability,
the next
yeah, to
meeting.
host a hybrid meeting, so if any of you have a conflict or something like
I'm a
that,
student.
you can join us on Zoom. Of course, you're welcome to come in person.
Okay, well, with that, we want to thank everybody for coming. We didn't ask Rick if he had anything to add for any reason. He's all good.
He's here.
Okay, so thank you so much for everybody for coming and attending. It's great to meet everyone in person that I haven't met in person before. It's good to see you, and then also good to meet all the new members. Glad to have you all here in attendance in some kind of way, either through Zoom or in person. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Good job. Nicely done.
Thank you.